You will be captivated and infused with positivity when you listen to today's episode. My guest is Dr. Danny Brassell. He is a speaker, coach, and the North American CEO of Cybersmarties, the safe social network training platform for kids. I met Danny just a few weeks ago during a speaker training. We had such a wonderful conversation and connection. I knew I had to invite him to come as my guest and share his tips and positive outlook with my audience. I promise you will be glued to your device listening to the fantastic stories and wisdom he shares. And if you like it, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. Hello and welcome to my podcast, Become. My name is Sabine Kvenberg and I am your host. The content will inspire you to reach your aspirations and become the best version of yourself. I feature interviews with successful individuals from various industries delving into their personal and professional journey, how they overcame adversities, and the strategies they used to achieve their goals. We have to become the person we are meant to be first, so we can live the life we are destined to live. That also means we must overcome challenges and work through difficult times to learn, grow, and become the next, more fabulous version of ourselves. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's get on this journey together. Welcome, Danny. I'm so happy to have you on my show and have this conversation with you. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on, Sabine, and thanks for all you do to spread some joy in the world. We need a lot more of you.
Thank you. Well, it is so fun sometimes how people meet up. And I met you at a workshop and we clicked right away. And we have so many things in common. And I thought, you know what? I have to have you on my podcast because I know you can bring so much value to my audience. Before we go into some of the details, so can you just give a brief introduction of who you are?
Well, I'll try to keep it brief, but I tend to give long answers to short questions, Sabina. So, my mission is to bring joy back into education in the workplace, and I do that in 4 different ways. First of all, I speak over 100 days all around the world, primarily to schools to motivate the teachers and also to show parents how to get their kids to love reading. But I also speak to corporate environments that are interested in revitalizing their team and boosting the energy. Second of all, I have the world's top reading engagement program online, which shows parents in just over 2 months how to get their kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. Because I find that schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I ask people is, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach kids why to read because I've never had to tell a kid, go turn on the TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it because they love it. And there are simple strategies that I share with my audiences on how to do that. Third, and this is where you and I met, is I work with entrepreneurs, executives, and business owners on how to create powerful presentations that get their audience to take the next step, whether that's to purchase your product or to donate to your cause or to invest in your idea. And then finally, I'm the North American CEO of a company called Cybersmarties, which was formed in 2015 by Diarmuid Hudner in Ireland, which is a social media platform for kids ages 5 to 12 that teaches kids how to use social media in a positive way and improve their well-being.
That's why I wanted to have you on the show because you are so diverse, and especially the last thing that you shared, that you teach and you have that platform, that online platform for children to interact in a positive way with social media. And when you shared that with me the first time, I said, wow, we need more of that. Because as a communication and confidence coach, I see a lot of times that communication is a missing link between how we connect with each other and build human relationships other than just looking at the screen, right? And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, all that bullying that is going on. And I would love to talk more about that. But before we go there, my question to you is, Have you always wanted to become a speaker? Was that your childhood dream?
Not exactly, Sabina. I'm going to have to give you a story on this one. So I was speaking to a school of kids in India and pumping them all up, telling them you can do anything you want in life. And a little boy approached me at the end of the speech. He was 6 years old with tears in his eyes. And I started to notice he had a stump for his left arm. He was missing his left arm. And he asked me, well, how can somebody like me succeed? And so I got down to his level, looked at him straight in the eye, and said, well, people tell you what you can't do all the time. I mean, I went to 18 different schools before sixth grade. You know, kids used to make fun of me. I even had teachers make fun of me, but because I stuttered. And finally, I had a teacher that she worked one-on-one with me, and she would sing things to me, and I would sing them back. And I gradually lost my stutter and became a swan. It's kind of like the movie The King's Speech. But I looked that boy in the eye and I said, "Isn't it interesting now that the boy that everybody used to make fun of and said he couldn't speak right now gets paid ridiculous amounts of money to go around the world to do what?" And he just had a big grin. He's like, "Speak." I'm like, "Absolutely. Don't let anybody tell you what you cannot do."
Wow, that is such a heartwarming story. And that is exactly what this podcast is about. It's about
Mhm.
becoming our next greater self. And however it looks like, it looks different for everybody. We need more positivity in this world, and we need to let them know that everything is possible, that you put your mind
Mhm.
to. Sometimes they need to hear it from someone else, like
Absolutely.
you or me, to give them the permission to grow and do whatever they want, and also tell them how great they are. That is fantastic.
Well, and that's
And
what's great about you as a coach, Sabina, is you get to be that person, that cheerleader. I used to always tell my students, I've taught all age levels from kindergartners to rocket scientists, but I always say the same thing. I'm like, sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you. They only give me the best and the brightest. Now let's go make this world a better place. And that's what you do when you're serving your clients.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes you are being directed by what I say, by higher power, by God, however you want to see it, um, where you need to be at that particular point.
Hmm.
To tell you the truth, when I started my acting career, I wanted to become that serious actress, and just wanted to do all the big plays. And the first theater that I ended up getting an engagement was theater for children.
Oh.
And at first, of course, as a young actress, you're like, oh, okay, I'm playing for children, right? Blah, blah, blah. But that was the best thing, because children are so honest, and I could touch them in so many different levels. I've never experienced so much joy in my life. And so I know what you're saying. You were an educator yourself, right? That's how you started out?
Yeah, taught in the inner city for many years. Loved it. Very, very gratifying.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So, how did you get started as a speaker?
Well, and now I'm going to have to get personal, Sabina. So in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, and turned out to be a huge scam, and we lost everything. And I could focus on all the negatives, but I'm a positive person like you, and I tend to focus on the positives. So first, I now know my wife is my life mate. I put her through the ringer, and she stuck by me. She's an incredible human being. Second of all, I stopped making money my motivation, because I realized easy come, easy go. It can be gone in a heartbeat. Third, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to say, but the more I read my Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. Fourth, I try not to judge others now, because I realize if you don't know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. I mean, if a person was looking at me, they'd say, "Oh, you deserved all those bad things," but they didn't really know exactly the whole background story. And fifth, and this is really the answer to your question, is I was a professor at the time, and my accountant said, "Well, you need to make this much more money this year, or else you're going to have to file for bankruptcy." And I didn't want to file bankruptcy, and so I started speaking on the side, and I hit his number right on the number. Well, the next year, Sabina, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. And so in year three, I said, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a speaking business, which has really been wonderful. And I always resisted coaching. And it wasn't until the pandemic where I was asked to coach people. And it was a very easy decision since all of my speaking engagements dried up overnight on a global pandemic. And so I started working with people, and I realized, wow, they actually like what I have to tell them, and we have a lot of success. And so I've been blessed. I've gotten to work with great people like you. I've worked with some famous people. I've worked with people that have climbed Mount Everest and been in outer space and won Olympic medals. But I get my gratification from anybody. And this is a lot of your audience. Is a lot of people, maybe they don't want to be speakers, but I've always said, but you can really expand your influence through speaking. If we can craft one presentation that you repeat again and again, you'll at least be more comfortable at attracting people to your circle of influence.
Absolutely. And I knew we had so many things in common, Danny, when we met the first time. I had a very similar experience. I let money be my guide at one point, and I also invested into a real estate program, a huge amount of money. Let me
Yeah,
just keep it
yeah.
at that way. And and then just realized, first of all, that's not me and it's not working. And I was kind of like swimming against the stream. And then I was getting into real estate and bought into stuff when it was on the height. And I
Yeah.
almost lost everything. I kept, and my husband and I, we both kept our heads up and not to lose our heads and everything else. But I so totally understand that. And anybody listening to it, and if you have found yourself in a situation like, oh my gosh, I am so out of my waters, or money was the driving force, and you did something you didn't like, or had to declare bankruptcy, don't feel bad. It's just part of the journey that brings you to the next step and to the next level you ought to be. Like it was for you, right?
Well, you're right. It was terrifying, and fortunately, I have a positive attitude towards things. I was recently speaking at an event, and the two speakers before me were talking about how to enjoy the journey, and I didn't mean to be facetious, but I got up there and I started off my talk. I said, you ever notice the people that say enjoy the journey have already succeeded? When you're in the journey, it's not much fun. You're like, wow, this is a lot of fun not being able to make my rent and having my electricity turned off. There's nothing fun about the journey at all. I mean, you need to appreciate the journey, but it's not fun. The journey is not fun. It's tough. And God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. And this is the power of creating a great presentation, is you have the ability to actually connect with a person that really needed to hear what you had to say. I mean, that's always my prayer before I go on stage, is God, use me as an instrument to glorify you. You could be that person. It's the same reason I became a teacher, was when I realized Oprah had a teacher. Somebody inspired her. If I can be that inspiration, well, that's what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Is there like one tip or one step or anything that you can share that helped you get over that hump, that helped you make a decision? This is it. I'm moving forward in a different way.
Well, I've been blessed throughout my life, Sabina, with lots of wonderful mentors, great parents, great teachers. My second grade teacher, Miss Hess, was amazing. One day, all of us kids were at our seats doing seat work, and she interrupted us and said, "Class, raise your hand if you can see this pencil." And all of us raised our hands, and she said, "Good. Follow me." And she got up out of her seat and went out to the hallway. We were all in the hallway, and she said, "Okay, raise your hand if you can see that exit sign at the end of the hall." And all of us raised our hands. She said, "Good, follow me." And she took us out to the playground. She said, "Raise your hand if you can see that blue house across the street." And all of us raised our hands. And she said, "Good." She said, "Now this is a tougher one. Raise your hand if you can see the water tower 5 blocks away. And all of us raised our hands. And she said, good. Now, this is a tough question. How far can you see? And one little girl, she raised her hand. She said, I can see a mile. I raised my hand. I said, I can see 2 miles. One little boy said, I can see 5 miles. And she said, any further? And all of us shook our heads. She said, good. All right. Now look up. We all looked up. And she said, raise your hand if you can see the sun. And all of us raised our hands. And she said, good. Did you know the sun is 92.9 million miles away? And the furthest any of you thought you could see is only 5 miles. You are grossly underestimating what you're capable of. I mean, I remember that
Wow.
story 50 years later. I mean, how do
Wow.
you not? And this is where I want people to think, do yourself a favor, turn off the TV news and read something inspiring or watch an inspiring movie or TV show. You know, I can already tell you what's on the news tonight. The world is coming to an end, and whoever the leader is at the time, they're doing a bad job. It's same negative news all the time. Keep I made a conscious decision actually during the pandemic. I'm not letting negativity get near me. I keep negative people away from me. I keep negative news away from me. You know, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So let's be part of the solution.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. First of all, the story that you shared, your teacher, this is so wonderful for people to understand. We are living sometimes way below of our
Mhm.
capabilities. And then second of all, yeah, if you switch the flip from negative thinking or staying in that dark moment to, okay, where can I go? Remember the story of my teacher, right?
Yeah,
Yes, of course. There's so much more out there that I can do. I love it. I love it. This is such great advice. Thank you so much, Danny.
thank you.
Before we started this recording, you mentioned something that someone said to you at one point. Why should I be on your program? Because you are my competition. And you said, I don't see it as competition. I see it as collaboration. And I truly believe in that. So, what is your perception, and how in your experience collaborating with others has helped you in your business?
Well, I'll give you another story because I know there's people that are hurting that are listening. And so I always remind them that in Chinese, the word crisis consists of 2 characters. One means danger, the other one means opportunity. And while there's all kinds of horrible things happening in the world, there's also all kinds of incredible opportunities if you look at them from the right perspective. It reminds me of a story I used to share with my little ones when I was a teacher of the king who had this childhood friend who had this annoying habit, whatever the circumstance, whether it was positive or negative, he always had the same response. This is good. Well, the king was out hunting with his friend one day, and his friend was always in charge of loading the king's rifle. Well, something went horribly wrong on this day, and as the king fired his rifle, it blew his right thumb completely off, to which his friend responded, this is good. The king was furious with his friend. He put his friend in prison. Well, about a year later, the king was out hunting in forbidden grounds when he was captured by a tribe of cannibals. And as the cannibals tied him to the stake and set logs at his feet to set him aflame to make their supper, one of the cannibals noticed that the king was missing his right thumb. Well, being a superstitious tribe, they never believed in eating anything that was not whole, so they released the king to his freedom. The king could not believe his good luck. As he ran back to the palace, he recalled what his friend had said a year earlier. So he went to the prison, released his friend, apologized profusely, told his friend the entire story, to which his friend responded, this is
It's
good.
good.
The king was furious. He's like, how can you say this is good? I just put you in prison for a year. His friend looked at him and said, but if you hadn't have put me in prison, I would have been out hunting with you, and the cannibals would have eaten me. Everything in life is about perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And don't take yourself too serious.
Absolutely. Well, and you knew that when we were working together. I mean, a lot of people when they're working with a person, they say, "Oh, talk about the worst moment of your life." I'm like, I don't think people need to hear that story. There's lots of negativity in the world. I think people need to hear something that lifts them up, and that's why I this is what separates me from a lot of coaches is yes, doom and gloom. It can be an effective sales tool when you keep on salting the wound, and but I have a problem with that. First of all, again, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had negative things happen to them. I think we need a lot more hope. Second of all, when I'm working with people, this is a speech you're going to give again and again. I mean, I have a friend and his daughter was murdered, and he's told that story to over 1,000 audiences. I don't know about you, Sabina. You got to be a pretty strong person to talk about the worst moment of your life that often. I would never do that. And third, and this is where people get angry with me. Um, I have an objective when I'm on a stage. I want people to leave smiling and feeling better than when they came in to watch me. There's something noble about telling stories and getting people to smile and laugh. And I'm not going to say this about everybody, but I've seen it with a lot of speakers. I believe when you tell that same sad story again and again, after the 20th time, those are crocodile tears. You've become desensitized. And now all you're doing is you're being manipulative to your audience
Mm,
to get them to buy your product. Now, I'm not going to say that for everybody, but I can, and I'm not going to say the names, but I know specific salespeople, and that's what they do all the time. And I have a major problem with that because that's manipulation. And it's
yes.
not serving the audience. And this is the thing that you and I talked about is you have a responsibility to serve your audience, whether they do business with you or not. You need to give them tools that'll help them immediately. That's what you do on this podcast all the time. This is a freebie. How can I serve my audience? A friend of mine, Joe Martin, he's a wonderful speaker, and he calls it napkin leadership. He says when you go to a restaurant and they give you a napkin, is your first response to stuff it down your shirt and wait for others to serve you, or is it to put over your arm and to serve others? This is what you and I do: is we serve others.
Yeah. And to tell you the truth, that is where you get the most bliss and satisfaction when you see you can make a difference. I am in the middle of a book project, and I have different co authors who are sharing their story. And by being the leader on that project, by helping them tell their story in a very effective way, and seeing also what it does for them or what it did for them, just in some instances they
Mhm.
had to go through a sad story, but it helped them process what they went through, and getting those thank yous. This was not my intention when I started it, but what I saw, what it turned into, it's just so beautiful to
Mm.
see. I wanted to talk about the one project that you started because I think it's so important to teach our children how to communicate in a positive way using what is available today. If we teach them or not, they still go on social media
Mhm.
at one point or another. So tell us about your project.
Well, it's not specifically my project. I was blessed during the pandemic. I was able to meet a gentleman online by the name of Diarmid Hudner. He's the founder of Cybersmarties. He's in Ireland, and he said, "Oh, Danny, you and I, we do the same thing. We teach positive habits to kids." And so he caught my ear. And I said, wow, we need that. Basically, his program within a couple of years completely eliminated cyberbullying in Ireland. Now the program's in New Zealand. It's in Turkey, it's in UAE, and I'm in charge of North America. And so the way it works is, let's say you were to text to me, Danny, I think you're fat and ugly. Well, it won't let you send the message. Instead, the kid gets a message that says, that's not a nice thing to say to Danny. What are some nice things you can say? And it frustrates kids so much because it's slowing them down that our research shows that within 2 days, the kids stop sending negative messages altogether. And, you know, social media is just like any type of technology. It is a tool. And when you introduce new technologies, what happens is if you don't train people how to use that technology, the lowest common denominator always comes in first. And so you saw that with social media. You see people making these negative comments all the time. And yeah, they might get the spotlight because people like to focus on the freaks, but it's not a proper manner in which to address people. And adults, I don't know if I can save adults, and so it was important for me to really work with children, showing them how to positively interact with one another. And so I'm very excited about it. It's a wonderful program. There's all kinds of people. This is why I only focus on positive stories. Is there's people out there all the time. I mean, if you watch the news, everything's going down the toilet, but I'm like, 95% of the people I'm working with are just absolutely extraordinary human beings, looking to make the world a little bit better place. And this is why you and I have talked about this. This is our responsibility, is to leave the world a little
Yeah.
bit better than we entered.
Absolutely. So if a parent listens to this podcast and said, "Oh, I want my child to learn that," so how can they do that?
Yeah, so we work directly with the schools, and so the school gets the program for all the kids. The teachers don't have to do anything. We control everything. We have human monitors. Parents are always completely freaked out after a couple of days because they see the types of messages kids are use language. It's kind of shocking to a lot of parents, and we curb that. We produce these reports for schools that show the school the emotional well-being of, and we never report which students. We just can say, well, this class, 20 of your 30 students are dropping F bombs, they're calling each other names and things like that. And we need to address that. And this is where I get very excited because we've just, this is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I've been communicating with police departments and I say, wouldn't it be great for police departments and schools to work together where we can show you the data from this school and say, well, 70% of the kids at this school are reporting that they're angry. Maybe we need to do an assembly to prevent that school shooting from happening, because uh, you ever notice that once there was one school shooting and it got tons of media coverage, now you get them every single week because the kids are getting media coverage.
Hmm.
It's a very simple psychological concept. When I was a teacher, I never paid attention to kids that were misbehaving. Kids want your attention, and they're going to do it either negatively or positively. If you only reinforce the positive, they eliminate the negative and will go for the positive attention. It's very simple psychology. One of the things I used to do with my students is when a kid wasn't on task, I would talk to them, but I would never use their first name. And kids started picking up on it. I only used your first name when you were on task because the kids wanted to hear their name. Just
Yeah.
basic little strategies.
Yeah. So basically, the program is not available for like individual at this
No,
point. It's just kind of before in
yeah,
schools.
it's for
Hmm.
schools because it's to train the whole school. If we started doing one parent here, one parent there, we have no control over the types of kids they're going to be exposed to. Like with a school district, we'll work with a school district, and it's up to the school district. Do you want the kids just in that school to communicate with one another, or do you want the entire school district communicating with one another? My goal eventually is that a kid in Sarasota, Florida, can communicate with a kid in Cairo, Egypt, and be able to learn a little bit more. I mean, you and I are also interested in the entire world, not just America. I'm like, I think kids need to be exposed that there's people with different thoughts and beliefs and cultures, and we should be less judgmental and more curious, as Walt Whitman used to like to say.
I think it's such a important um, message, and also an important
Hmm.
step forward into the future, what you do right now. And if people want to learn more, I'm sure that they can get it on your website. I make sure to put this in the show notes. But is there a specific site that you would want people to go to learn more?
Well, as a thank you to you and your audience, Sabina, for putting up with me, I wanted to give everybody a couple of free gifts. So if you go to freegiftfromdanny.com, again, freegiftfromdanny.com, I'm going to give you two goodies. First of all, I'm going to give you a copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. This is a book I wrote for an elementary school principal who was trying to keep his faculty and staff positively engaged. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. So every week I give you a concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation, demonstrates the same concept. You can read that in 5 minutes and look at the pictures. Also, I'm going to give everybody access to a 5-day reading challenge I did online last summer for about 700 parents around the world, where every day for an hour, I give you all kinds of strategies on how to get your kid to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. If you go to freegiftfromdanny.com, you can get all those things. But I just want to say, Sabine, I'm so grateful for you having me on today, and I'm grateful for all that you do, and I'm glad that you're touching the world in such a positive way.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. And last, can you do me a favor and hop over to wherever you listen to your podcast and leave us a review? You can also click the link in the show notes and go to my page, podpage.com/become. Leave a review and a rating. Thank you so much for your support. Stay happy, my friend, and always remember, serve from the heart, follow your passion, and live the life you imagine.